I never thought a phone call could change my life so much, but that's exactly what happened. One crisp autumn afternoon in Chicago, I noticed my phone ringing with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick it up. When I answered, I recognized the voice immediately, even though it had been years. "Samantha, it's Isabella," she said, sounding both formal and something else I couldn't quite figure out. "Isabella," I replied, trying to keep calm. "What's going on?" Isabella, my sister who I hadn't spoken to in years, was calling to tell me our grandmother had died. The news itself was shocking, but the way she said it made me feel like there was more to it. "I just wanted to let you know," she said with a hint of mockery. "I'm sure you're busy with your modest life." I could almost hear her smirking through the phone. Her words hurt, but I tried not to show it. "Thank you for telling me. I'll make plans to come." Her words not only hurt, but also brought back many memories. Growing up, Isabella was always the favorite. She had our father's approval and seemed to get everything easily. I, on the other hand, was often overlooked, no matter how hard I tried. Isabella and I hadn't spoken much in years. After she had stolen my fiancé, David, from me, I cut ties with her and the rest of my family. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the unfair treatment I had always felt. David had been my fiancé, the love of my life, and we had plans together until Isabella, with her charm, got involved. David left me for her, and I was heartbroken. It wasn't just about losing him. It was a betrayal that left deep scars. Our family was always divided. Our father favored Isabella because she was like him. My mother, though caring, was often stuck in the middle. She tried to support me, but it was clear Isabella was the favorite. After the breakup, I chose a different path. I left my job as a school administrator to focus on raising my daughter, Lily. My husband, John, was a supportive tech executive who loved me for who I was. We had a cozy home in the suburbs and a life full of love. Lily, our 6-year-old daughter, loved drawing and even had a popular YouTube channel where she shared her artwork. Despite the happiness in my personal life, Isabella's call brought back a flood of old emotions. The idea of going back to the family home for the funeral made me nervous. I hadn't been there in years, and the memories were mixed. Our grandmother had always been kind and supportive. Her death marked the end of an era, and Isabella's call felt like I was being pulled back into a world I had tried to leave behind. I spent the next few days getting ready for the trip. The thought of seeing Isabella again filled me with a mix of dread and anticipation. It wasn't just about the funeral. It was about facing the family issues that had shaped so much of my life. I couldn't shake the feeling that Isabella's call had more to it than just the news of our grandmother's death. On the day of the funeral, I stood in front of the old family home. It looked exactly the same, yet different. It was like the walls held the echoes of our childhood, the laughter, the fights, the dreams, and the disappointments. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with grief and memories. I saw familiar faces, some sad and others with hidden motives. As I moved through the crowd, I saw Isabella, her eyes scanning the room with practiced indifference. She was surrounded by people who seemed to hang on her every word, her charm still strong. I watched her with unease. Despite the years and distance, it felt like we were still in the same old struggle. Isabella's presence was a stark reminder of the family dynamics that had always been part of my life. During the ceremony, as the eulogies were being delivered, Isabella managed to corner me. "Samantha," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "it's been a while." I forced a smile and replied, "Yes, it has. How have you been?" "Oh, she replied, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Life has been interesting." I could sense the undertone in her words, the same old rivalry that had never really gone away. Looking at her, I realized this reunion wasn't just about mourning our grandmother. It was about facing the past, the betrayals, and the choices that shaped our lives. Little did I know this encounter would lead to revelations that would challenge everything I thought I knew about my sister and our family. The days leading up to the funeral were tense and filled with unresolved emotions. I tried to focus on my family, John, Lily, and our daily routines. But I couldn't ignore the upcoming reunion with Isabella and the family I had distanced myself from. The familiar, painful echoes of the past were all too real. On the day of the funeral, the air was thick with grief and unresolved emotions. The family home was filled with relatives and friends, all paying their respects. The house, with its worn charm, seemed to watch over us like an old friend holding secrets. The walls felt heavy with the weight of past arguments, laughter, and hidden truths. As I entered the living room, I felt Isabella's eyes on me, her presence as imposing as ever. Her polished exterior masked the deep-seated rivalry that had always existed between us. She soon approached me again, her smile more genuine but still carrying an edge. "I've been meaning to catch up," Isabella said, her voice curious. "It's been a while since we've had a chance to talk." I forced a smile, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Yes, it has. How have things been for you?" "Oh, Isabella replied with a wave of her hand. "Busy, but good. I'm sure you've heard from the family about how things have been for me." I nodded, though I wasn't sure what she meant. The last I heard, Isabella was living a luxurious life in Los Angeles. The stories I heard painted a picture of success and perfection, but I knew better than to believe them completely. During the wake, Isabella flaunted her perceived success. She talked about her life in Los Angeles, her upscale lifestyle, and her supposed achievements. It was as though she was trying to outshine everyone to prove her life was better than mine. I watched her with a mix of curiosity and irritation. I knew beneath her confident facade was a tangled web of lies and manipulations. It was hard to ignore her mentions of David Parker, my former fiancé and now her ex-husband. Her casual references to him, her attempts to show she was unaffected by their failed marriage, felt like salt in an old wound. David had once been the center of my world. We had planned a future together until Isabella, with her charm, had stolen him away. The betrayal left me heartbroken and disillusioned. Seeing Isabella flaunt her life so casually was a painful reminder of the hurt I had tried to move past. I decided to confront Isabella about the past, hoping to find some closure. As the crowd began to thin out, I pulled her aside into a quiet corner of the house. "Isabella, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep calm. She looked at me, narrowing her eyes a bit. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "I need to know why," I said, trying not to let my voice shake. "Why did you take David from me? What made you think you could do that?" Isabella's expression changed from fake cheerfulness to something colder and more calculating. "Samantha, it's not about taking anything. David and I had our own connection. You just didn't see it. You manipulated him," I said, my voice rising with emotion. "You knew how much I loved him." She shrugged like it didn't matter. "David made his own choices. You have to move on, Samantha. Life doesn't wait for anyone." Her dismissive attitude made me furious. "You never understood it, did you? It wasn't just about David. It was about how you always got everything while I struggled." Isabella's face hardened. "Don't blame me for your problems. We all have our battles. Maybe if you had been more assertive, things would have been different." Her words hurt, reopening old wounds. I wanted to lash out, but took a deep breath to stay composed. "This isn't just about David. It's about our family and how things have always been against me." Before Isabella could respond, some distant relatives arrived, and I had to step away, leaving the confrontation unresolved. The rest of the evening was a blur of faces and condolences, but my mind was stuck on the past and the issues with Isabella. The next day, as the funeral ended, I felt both relieved and worried. The family problems were still there, and I knew there was more to uncover. Isabella's perfect life was starting to crack, and I was determined to find out the truth. I left the funeral with a heavy heart, but a new sense of purpose. There was more to the story, and I was ready to face it. The confrontation had set the stage for deeper revelations, and I was ready to uncover the lies and deceptions that had shaped our lives. In the days after the funeral, everything felt strangely calm. I kept replaying my confrontation with Isabella, trying to make sense of it. The family issues were still unresolved. My mother's apology was nice, but it didn't fix the years of problems. John and Lily were my support during this tough time. They sensed my distress but chose to offer comfort rather than prying into my troubles. Lily, with her innocent curiosity, continued to pour her heart into her YouTube channel, sharing her drawings with the world. Her joy was a bright spot amidst the darkness. Soon, the next part of this story began. Isabella, always dramatic, took to social media to mock me. Her posts were sarcastic, showing herself as successful while implying my life was dull. It was frustrating to see her trying to belittle my happiness so publicly. That's when Lily's YouTube channel became a tool in this battle. After a particularly cruel post from Isabella, Lily and I decided to use her platform for more than just showcasing her drawings. I helped Lily create a video that countered Isabella's lies, focusing on the positive aspects of our life and subtly addressing the falsehoods Isabella was spreading. The video, though seemingly innocent, had clear references to Isabella's attempts to undermine us. It quickly gained attention, and soon the comment sections of both Lily's channel and Isabella's posts were filled with reactions. People began to see Isabella's facade for what it was, a mask hiding her insecurities and deceptions. As the video went viral, Isabella's reputation started to crumble. The backlash on social media was quick and harsh. Comments pointed out the inconsistencies in her stories and questioned her integrity. The spotlight she had crafted was now exposing her vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Isabella's personal life began to fall apart too. David, struggling with the public fallout from our confrontation and the negative attention on his and Isabella's failed marriage, made a significant mistake at work. This led to his dismissal from his job as a software engineer. The pressure was too much for him, and he fell into a deep spiral of self-doubt. Unable to cope with the financial and emotional strain, Isabella made a drastic decision. She filed for divorce, cutting the last ties with David. Their son James, caught in this turmoil, was placed into a care facility because of Isabella's unstable situation, a stark contrast to the privileged life she once flaunted. The family dynamics were changing fast. My mother, who had always favored Isabella, approached me with a heartfelt apology for the past. She admitted that her favoritism towards Isabella was a mistake and acknowledged the hurt it caused. "I'm sorry for everything, Samantha," she said, her eyes filled with regret. "We should have treated you better. I see now how much pain we caused." I appreciated her words, but the scars of the past were not easily healed. I chose to keep a distant but cordial relationship with her, focusing on what truly mattered, my family's happiness and well-being. Amid these revelations, John and I decided to take a break from the chaos. We planned a joyful outing to an amusement park, a chance for Lily to enjoy herself and for us to reconnect as a family. It was a reminder of the simple joys and the love we shared. The trip was everything we needed, a day filled with laughter and bonding. It reinforced the strength of our family and highlighted the content life we had built together. It was a much-needed break from the drama and reminded me of the importance of moving forward with love and support. As we enjoyed the day, I realized that while the past had its shadows, the future held the promise of light. With Isabella's downfall and the family's apologies, I felt a sense of closure. The journey was far from over, but for now, I could focus on cherishing the present and looking forward to a brighter future. The weeks after our trip to the amusement park brought a profound sense of calm. My life, once shaken by family discord, was finding its balance again. As I looked around at my little family, I realized how much we had grown through all the trials. Isabella's downfall was a hard lesson, but it was a reminder of the destructive power of envy and manipulation. Her failed attempts to belittle my life had only served to bring her own downfall into the spotlight. The divorce, the loss of her son to a care facility, and her diminishing reputation were harsh consequences of her choices. David, once a part of my life and now a figure of past regrets, faced his own challenges. His dismissal from his job left him struggling to find his footing. Yet, despite everything, I felt detached from him. My focus had shifted entirely to my own family and the life we had worked so hard to build. John and I continued to nurture our relationship, finding strength in each other. Our daughter, Lily, thrived in her creative endeavors. Her YouTube channel remained a beacon of joy and positivity, helping to distract from the negativity that had surrounded us. Watching her grow and flourish was a constant reminder of what really mattered. One day I received a letter from my mother. In it, she expressed her sorrow for the way things had unfolded and asked for forgiveness. Her apology was heartfelt, but I knew that mending our relationship would take time. I responded with kindness, acknowledging her regret while emphasizing the importance of moving forward. Our family dynamics had been permanently altered, but the experience had also brought clarity. My parents' favoritism towards Isabella and the subsequent fallout had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience and forgiveness. Healing from these wounds required more than just time. It required understanding and a willingness to let go of past grievances. In the quiet moments of reflection, I understood that the pain of the past had forged a stronger bond within my own family. John, Lily, and I were more connected than ever, and our shared experiences had deepened our appreciation for one another. We found solace in our daily routines and the small moments that brought us joy. As summer turned to fall, I began planning a new project, one that would honor the lessons learned and the family we had become. I started a community initiative focused on helping families navigate conflicts and build stronger relationships. It was a way to turn my experiences into something positive, offering support and guidance to others who might be facing similar challenges. Looking back, I saw how far we had come from those turbulent days. The confrontation at our grandmother's funeral, the subsequent revelations, and the social media battles had all led to a profound transformation. Isabella's story was a cautionary tale, but it was also a testament to my own resolve and the importance of moving forward with love. As I closed the final chapter of the story, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been hard but also enlightening. The road ahead was filled with promise, and I was ready to embrace it with an open heart. In the end, it was the love of my family and the lessons learned that had guided me through. With John by my side, Lily's laughter brightening our days, and the community project taking shape, I knew that the future was ours to shape. As I looked forward, I carried with me the certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, our family's strength and unity would guide us through.
Why are you, a total stranger, staying in our house for so long? My sister-in-law scolded me angrily. After losing my beloved husband, I continued living with my in-laws. Wasn't I allowed to be there? I never thought you were this kind of woman. Leave as soon as possible, she insisted. Even my usually kind mother-in-law began criticizing me harshly. If that's how it was, I'd leave on my own. These were the words screamed in my heart, but I suppressed them. I understand. I said while vowing revenge. My name is Gina, and I am 40 years old. I work as an elementary school teacher. My husband, James, also an elementary school teacher at a different school, was 42 that year. We were married for 12 years. We met at the first elementary school I worked at after graduating from college. James, 2 years my senior, was a reliable senior colleague who taught me various things about school life. Through work, we were drawn to each other and eventually got married. I loved children and became a teacher to spend time with them, but sadly, we didn't have any children. My father-in-law passed away in his 50s before we got married, and James lived with his mother until I joined the family. Thanks to the real estate and other assets inherited from my father-in-law, my mother-in-law was financially secure. However, since the beginning of our marriage, we had decided to pay $2,000 monthly to my in-laws. We had a dream we wanted to realize. Despite needing to save for it, we regularly transferred money to my in-laws for utilities, food, and a small rent out of a sense of duty. We continued to work as teachers, increasingly worried about the growing number of children not attending school. Our dream was to establish a learning center where such children could study comfortably. James's older sister, Mary, who is 3 years older than him, is married and lives in another state. My sister-in-law's son left home last spring for studies, so it should be just the two of them now. Although living about an hour's drive away, my sister-in-law visited every weekend, asking my mother-in-law for financial help. My son's tuition is short. Can you help a little? My sister-in-law would softly ask. Really? It can't be helped. How much do you need? My mother-in-law would spoil my sister-in-law. For some reason, James couldn't understand why. Frustrated, he finally asked his sister one day, "You received a fair amount from Dad's inheritance, right? Why are you always short of money?" he asked incredulously. My sister-in-law then retaliated. "You don't have any kids, so you wouldn't understand. Raising children is incredibly expensive. You talk about inheritance, but that money can't last forever." However, my sister-in-law's spending was clearly excessive, even in my eyes. Once she asked for money for education, another time for home repairs, and before that for food. Every time, my mother-in-law would give my sister-in-law a considerable amount. I couldn't understand why. That day, we went to our respective schools as usual. An ordinary morning, the usual scenery, until that phone call. I received news that James had collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Urged to hurry there, I exclaimed in shock, "What?" My husband collapsed. Confused, but upon reaching the hospital, I found James unconscious, and he had to undergo thorough examinations. I wished it was all a bad dream, but despite aggressive treatment, James passed away that night. Faced with this unexpected event, I didn't even have time to cry. Immediately taking leave from work to arrange the funeral, I felt I couldn't mentally survive otherwise. My mother-in-law, likely more heartbroken than me, courteously received the mourners throughout the funeral. It was an opportunity to meet my sister-in-law's family again, my sister-in-law, husband Robert, and their son Alex, who was a college student, helped devotedly. However, my sister-in-law herself didn't seem to grieve over her own brother's death. It almost seemed like she was happy about it. After James's funeral, I returned to my mother-in-law's house. My sister-in-law's family said they had other things to do and went home without dropping by. Then, my mother-in-law spoke quietly, "Gina, I never thought being bereaved of my son would be this lonely." Hearing these words, my pent-up sadness burst out, and I broke down crying. "If it's okay with you, Gina, would you stay in this house forever? I'm lonely living by myself." My mother-in-law spoke kindly to me. "Let's support each other from now on, Mother," I replied, wiping away my tears. However, more troubles followed just as we decided to live together. My mother-in-law suddenly collapsed. It might have been due to the grief of losing her son. She was diagnosed with a stroke. Fortunately, she survived but was left with paralysis in her right side. I wish to continue living in this house. There are so many memories here. I want to spend my time here, she said with slightly slurred speech but with determination. I'm fine, so please continue to focus on your work, Gina, my mother-in-law kindly told me. However, I was worried about leaving my half-paralyzed mother-in-law alone at home. We decided to use long-term care insurance for home care with the help of a helper. Even after James passed away, I continued to contribute $2,000 monthly for my mother-in-law. However, my sister-in-law started visiting her mother more frequently. I'm just worried about Mom, my sister-in-law said. But could anyone understand this? From past experiences, I felt I shouldn't easily believe my sister-in-law's words. My mother-in-law, having lost her mobility and feeling weak, asked, "Gina, Mary wants to live here with us. What do you think? Mary wants to too? What about her husband?" I asked in surprise. "Alex is already in college and not at home. She says it's okay for her to live here alone. Her husband might move here eventually too," my mother-in-law explained. I felt uneasy and asked frankly, "If you think it's good, I won't oppose it. But what about me?" "What are you saying, Jeanette? You're like a daughter to me. It's totally fine for you to be here," my mother-in-law assured me. However, if my sister-in-law actually moved into the house, I wouldn't be able to stop her like James did. This left me with unresolved anxiety. Amid these concerns, I had to leave the house for a week-long training, leaving my mother-in-law's care to the helper. "Mother, I'll be away for a week from tomorrow, so please follow the helper's instructions," I said, trying to sound lighthearted to ease my mother-in-law's anxiety. "Don't give money to Mary if she comes, and if something seems odd, contact her husband too." I was very worried about the possibility of my sister-in-law visiting the house during her absence. I couldn't concentrate on my training because of this worry. Upon returning home after a week, I was greeted by my sister-in-law. "Welcome back. Mom wants to talk to you." My sister-in-law looked at me with a smug smile. I had an ominous feeling entering the living room. My mother-in-law looked at me with a displeased expression. "I'm back," I greeted timidly, overwhelmed by the atmosphere. "Gina, were you trying to kick me out and put me in a facility?" My mother-in-law suddenly accused me with anger. Confused by the situation, my sister-in-law chimed in, "Hey, Gina, remember what you said before? You said, 'I want to put Mom in a facility.' It's too much to handle her, didn't you?" She continued as if I had said such a thing. "It's okay, since you're a stranger anyway. I'll take care of Mom from now on. So you don't need to be here anymore," my sister-in-law said to me with a deliberately harsh face. My mother-in-law also showed her anger, screaming at me with a fierce look. "I can't believe it. You're a nuisance. Just leave quickly." "Understood. I will leave." With no strength to argue back, I held back my tears and started packing my belongings, leaving behind the items filled with memories of James. I took only the essentials and left the house. "Thank you for everything," I said at the entrance, to which my sister-in-law, eager to drive me out, said, "You're still here? Leave quickly." A mix of sadness and frustration greatly disturbed my heart. Being driven out of the house, I returned to my parents' home without notice. "What happened, Gina? What's with the luggage?" My mother couldn't hide her surprise at my sudden return. "Sorry for the suddenness, but right now, I don't want to talk about it. I'll go to work from here, so please leave me alone for a while." The room I used to occupy at my parents' house was now empty. I laid down the luggage on the floor and gazed at the ceiling, letting my thoughts wander. What did my sister-in-law plan to do with her own family? My mother-in-law had mentioned that Robert might eventually move in with her, but I never sensed such intentions from my sister-in-law. I wanted to think it was none of my business anymore, but I couldn't stay silent when I thought of my mother-in-law. Then, I remembered something. The day before James collapsed, he tried to tell me something and was about to hand me an envelope, but he was called away by his mother, and I never got to hear about the envelope from him. What could be inside it? Could it be a will? I was worried. Hesitantly, I opened the envelope and checked its contents. Seeing what was inside the envelope, I was astonished. The next day, I left for work from my parents' house, reported my training to the principal, returned to my duties, and ended the day as if nothing had happened. "Excuse me, I'm leaving now," I said as I prepared to leave. And a colleague said to me, "You must be tired from the training. It must have been tough losing your husband. Don't overdo it." However, the reason I was in a hurry to get home wasn't due to fatigue or the sorrow of James' death. I needed to contact Robert and ask about the situation with my sister-in-law. Considering it might turn into a serious conversation, I was hesitant to use my personal phone in a public place where anyone could overhear. On my way home, I sent an email to Robert expressing my desire to talk to him in person. "I have something to talk about regarding my wife too," Robert replied immediately. When I got home, I locked myself in my room and called Robert. He seemed to have been waiting for my call and responded immediately. "Gina, I'm glad. I was just about to contact you." Robert started with a relieved voice. I told him about Mary staying at her mother's house and went on to explain that she was making false claims. "Oh, you are?" my mother said, surprised at Robert's sudden appearance. "Yes, he's the husband of my late husband's sister." "Mom, you've met him before, haven't you?" I explained. My mother couldn't immediately recall who he was, but eventually remembered. "Yes, I've seen him before." Seeing my mother's realization and joy, I explained, "Actually, I wanted to consult him about my husband's family matters." After leading Robert to the living room and briefly exchanging greetings, I took out an envelope. "I want you to see this." The envelope contains several photos and a report. As I spread the photos and the report in front of Robert, he exclaimed in surprise, "What is this?" The photos showed my sister-in-law with a young man enjoying herself at a nightclub and heading to a hotel. The report from a detective agency detailed evidence of my sister-in-law's expenses. James entrusted this to me before he passed away, and since he died before we could discuss it, I had only recently looked at it. I explained the situation to Robert. James had suspected his sister of reckless spending and had secretly commissioned an investigation intending to discuss the results with me, but he passed away before he could. Robert trembled with anger at the photos. I thought she was frequently leaving the house, but to think she was doing this. With a sigh full of indignation, Robert said, "Gina, can you come with me right now? This situation can't be ignored." I had intended to do so from the start and nodded immediately. 30 minutes later, we arrived at my mother-in-law's house and rang the doorbell. "It's Gina." "I've come as promised," I said, and soon heard my sister-in-law's annoyed voice. "How long do you plan to make me wait?" The sound of unlocking the door came, and the door opened. "Come in," my sister-in-law greeted us. But upon seeing Robert, she tried to close the door. Robert quickly grabbed the doorknob. "Mary, we need to talk. Can you listen for a moment?" he said, holding the door. His voice was calm, but his anger was palpable. My sister-in-law struggled to close the door, but couldn't overpower the man's strength, and eventually had to leave it open. "Fine, what do you want?" she said, allowing us to stay at the entrance, seemingly not wanting my mother-in-law to be aware of Robert's unexpected visit. "Is that you in these pictures? Who's the man next to you?" Robert asked, confronting his wife with the photos. "Where did you get these? No way." Mary was shocked upon seeing the photos. "Do you remember?" "Well, who is this? Answer me." Robert, usually mild-mannered, pressed his wife. "Just a friend. Can I have young friends?" My sister-in-law retorted, defensively. "Don't lie. I know everything." Robert yelled at her. "Why? Who told you?" Realizing my sister-in-law could no longer continue her lies, she looked defeated. "Your late brother James was concerned about your spending and had it investigated." Robert calmly revealed the truth. "You demanded money from your mother and squandered it all on a nightclub. I'm aware of the entire situation." Robert continued, trying to contain his anger. "It's hard enough to pay for Alex's tuition, and you exhaust our living expenses and still dare to ask for more money. What a comfortable life, huh?" He continued, his voice filled with rage. His anger did not subside. "That's enough. I don't care if you leave us. We're getting a divorce," he coldly declared to her. "What?" My sister-in-law muttered in shock. "Didn't you hear me? We're getting a divorce. I'll send the divorce papers later. Fill them out and send them back," Robert stated bluntly. At those words, my sister-in-law collapsed onto a seat. Later, my sister-in-law and Robert proceeded with the divorce through a lawyer and ultimately finalized it. They agreed to consider her spending at the nightclubs as a reason for compensation and to share the payment of Alex's tuition until his university graduation. However, there was a possibility that she might default on the payments, so they agreed that a lawyer would collect the payments monthly. After receiving her share of my father-in-law's inheritance, my sister-in-law had squandered it all on her expenses at the nightclub and then set her sights on my mother-in-law's property. But she found the bank account balance to be lower than expected, and her plan failed. In fact, it seemed that the money James and I had been giving my mother-in-law was used for living expenses and given to my sister-in-law as she demanded, leaving almost no savings behind. My in-laws' house belonged to my mother-in-law, and there was probably no more money left to give to my sister-in-law unless the house was sold. I learned from the caregiver that my sister-in-law, realizing her failure, had abandoned my mother-in-law and left. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law continued to live a modest life alone with the help of the caregiver. "Mommy." I heard my daughter's voice, sounding surprised and worried. I tried hard to stay awake, but I couldn't, and I fell unconscious right in front of her. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My daughter was holding my hand tightly, not wanting to leave me alone. I felt bad for scaring her. I was about to say sorry when she spoke first. "Mommy, the baby in your tummy says they don't want Daddy to erase them." Her words surprised me. "My name is Linda Williams. I'm 27 years old, and I take care of our home. I live with my husband, Mark, who is 2 years older than me, and our daughter, Sarah, who is 4 years old. Before, I used to work as a sports trainer, but I had to stop because I got pregnant. It made me sad to leave my job, but I wasn't feeling well often after I found out about the pregnancy, so I didn't have a choice. It was tough for me to quit, but there were some good things too. Before that, Mark didn't really help out much with chores or taking care of Sarah, but he started doing more to help me out. Even though I was worried about my health, I was happy to see Mark changing. I thought things would be okay. "Mommy, wake up. It's morning." I woke up to Sarah's voice, and it was already 7 a.m. Sarah's daycare bus comes at 7:30 a.m., so I got up quickly. "Oh no, Sarah, we have to get ready fast. What happened? We slept too late. If we don't hurry, we'll miss the bus." While brushing my teeth, I worried that Sarah might get confused. When I left the room, I realized I hadn't seen Mark anywhere. He usually leaves by 7:15 a.m., so he should still be at home. Maybe he's downstairs having breakfast. I felt a bit annoyed that he didn't check on us, but I headed for the stairs. Then it happened. I slipped, and for a moment, I felt like I was flying through the air. I'm going to fall. I reached out instinctively and grabbed onto the handrail, stopping myself from tumbling down the stairs. Phew, that was close. I immediately put my hand on my stomach, but I didn't hit it, and it didn't hurt. Just as I let out a sigh of relief, Sarah, looking worried, rushed over. "Mommy, are you okay?" "I'm fine, honey. Sorry for scaring you." I reassured Sarah as I hugged her tightly. Then Mark, hearing the noise, hurried over from downstairs. "What happened?" I slipped and almost fell down the stairs. "Whoa, be careful." "I'm sorry, but it felt like the floor was really slippery and... Wait a minute. I noticed that the floor looked cleaner than usual. I hadn't noticed before, but the wooden floor in the hallway was shining, like someone had polished it. Mark then explained in a flustered tone. "All right, I waxed the floor last night." "Waxed? Why did you suddenly decide to do that?" "I noticed it while cleaning the floor, but I guess I got a little too excited." "I'm sorry," Mark explained. "Oh, I see." I was surprised that he had waxed the floor, something he had never done before. But lately, he had been helping out a lot more with chores around the house. So maybe he was starting to notice the little things. Once men start paying attention to details, They just can't stop, can they? Even though it seemed a bit strange, I decided not to worry about it. A few days later, on a Sunday, Mark had to work, so I took Sarah to the park by ourselves. Before, I used to run around and play with Sarah, but I couldn't do that now. I watched Sarah happily playing on the swing, with a water bottle Mark had prepared for me in my hand. Who would have thought that Mark would start preparing things like a water bottle for me? When Sarah was born, Mark wasn't interested in anything at home. It still makes me emotional when I think about it. He didn't seem interested in Sarah either, so whenever I talked to him about it, he got upset, and he started coming home from work later and later. The fact that he now prepares a water bottle for me is still surprising, but it makes me really happy. Thinking about this and feeling a bit thirsty, I decided to take a sip of the tea Mark had made for me. Then, Mommy, Sarah called out suddenly. After drinking about a quarter of the bottle, I suddenly felt dizzy and started to feel unsteady on my feet. I held onto the swing's fence for support, but even then, I could feel myself getting weaker, and it was hard to stay standing. Mommy, what's happening? Help, Mommy! I heard Sarah's voice, sounding surprised and worried. I tried my best to stay conscious, knowing that if I fainted, Sarah would be left alone. But despite my efforts, I collapsed while shielding my stomach. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was the bright white ceiling above me. I felt disoriented for a moment, but then I noticed the smell of disinfectant and saw a nurse approaching, asking, "Are you okay?" It dawned on me that I was in a hospital, and then I thought of Sarah. "Excuse me, do you know where my daughter is?" She was with me when I passed out. I asked the nurse as I sat up. She nodded understandingly and reassured me with a smile. "She came to the hospital with you in an ambulance. She should be with your husband now." My husband. He left work early to come here. He arrived a little while ago. He's such a caring husband, the nurse informed me before leaving the room to call them. Feeling relieved that Sarah wasn't alone, my head started spinning again, and I collapsed back onto the bed. Why did I faint when there were no issues during my previous prenatal checkups? Was it because I moved around too much, or did I eat something bad? As these thoughts raced through my mind, I suddenly remembered the tea from the water bottle that I had drunk just before I fainted. Come to think of it, that tea, just as I pondered this, the door opened and the nurse, a doctor, Mark, and Sarah entered. "Mommy," Sarah exclaimed with relief. "Sarah, I'm so glad you're here. I'm sorry for leaving you alone," I said, relieved to see her. "I'm okay. But what about Mommy? Are you okay, Mommy?" Sarah asked, sounding worried. "Yeah, I'm feeling better now," I reassured her, patting her head as she rushed over to me. The doctor smiled beside me. In the end, the doctor decided that I needed to stay in the hospital for 2 or 3 days. After they finished examining me, both the doctor and the nurse left the room. Mark said, "I'll go get a drink," and he left too. In the hospital room, it was just me and Sarah. Then Sarah seemed a bit uneasy, like she wanted to say something. "What's on your mind, Sarah?" I asked. "Mommy, can you promise not to tell Daddy a secret?" Sure, but why?" I was curious, but I agreed, and Sarah leaned in closer to me with a serious expression. "The baby says they don't want Daddy to make them disappear." Huh? I was momentarily stunned, unable to comprehend what Sarah was trying to say. Sarah then looked a bit frustrated and spoke louder. "The baby says Daddy's being mean, and the tea in the water bottle." Her words caught me off guard. I had also noticed an odd bitterness in the tea from the water bottle. When I drank it, I thought maybe Mark had bought a different kind of tea, so I didn't think much of it at the time. But now, thinking back, I felt a wave of dizziness right after drinking that tea. A small part of me wondered if there was a connection to my fainting spell. "But what does it mean?" the baby is saying. "Hey, Sarah. Sorry I took so long. The cafeteria was busy." Mark interrupted as he walked back into the room. I was so surprised by his sudden appearance that I couldn't bring myself to ask Sarah further about what she meant. Sarah seemed uncomfortable and buried her face in the bed. Is everything okay? Mark asked, noticing the tension in the room. Nah, it's nothing, I replied, trying to brush off the tension. Well, whatever. I'm heading home for today. I have work tomorrow. Just rest up, okay? Mark said as he took Sarah's hand and left. Sarah hesitated for a moment before following him. Let's go home with Daddy today. Mommy is staying at the hospital, Sarah said as they left. Oh, okay, I replied, feeling uneasy as they walked out. I couldn't shake off the worry about Sarah, but there wasn't much I could do at the moment. I just had to focus on getting discharged as soon as possible and settled back into bed. But Sarah's unsettling words lingered in my mind, making it hard to sleep. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital while my husband was at work, so my friend Kimberly came to pick me up. Kimberly was a friend from the gym where I used to work, and she had been looking after me since I had to quit due to my health condition. I was shocked to hear you fainted, but you seem to be doing much better than I thought. I've been sleeping so well in the hospital that I feel much better. I'm glad. I was worried because you're pregnant, Kimberly said as we talked in the car on our way home. As we chatted, I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. I had been feeling tired and foggy-headed lately, but surprisingly, I started feeling better after just a few days in the hospital. It struck me that the only significant change during that time was that I had been taking a break from household chores and childcare, and I had been eating balanced meals in the hospital. And then it hit me. So that means I didn't eat Mark's cooking yesterday. I recalled several odd occurrences since Mark had taken over the housework. Besides almost slipping on the freshly waxed floor, there were other incidents that bothered me. Things would be placed in unusual spots, causing me to trip. Once I was told the shower was ready, that there was no hot water, only cold water. It happened often, especially during winter, which made me rush to the hospital out of concern for the baby. Thankfully, everything was fine, but it was incredibly stressful. I had initially dismissed these incidents as simple mistakes caused by Mark's lack of experience with housework. But upon reflecting on them now, each one seemed like it could have serious consequences if one wrong step was taken. Linda, we're here? Kimberly's voice interrupted my thoughts. Oh yeah. I realized we had arrived at the house. Seeing my quiet demeanor, Kimberly looked at me with concern. If you're not feeling well, you should let me know, okay? Yeah, I will. Thanks. You should rest for today at least. I'll go pick up Sarah, okay? Thank you, I really appreciate it, I said as we got out of the car together. I made a mental note to have a proper conversation with Sarah once she returned in the evening. When Sarah came home with Kimberly, she even brought some deli food for dinner and told me to call her if anything happened before leaving. She was like a superhero, and I couldn't help but feel grateful. As we ate dinner with the deli food Kimberly had brought, I felt surprisingly well, so I decided to talk to Sarah again. Can we discuss what happened the other day? I asked, and Sarah nodded seriously. Sure, Mommy. What do you want to talk about? She asked. Do you think you could talk to the baby in my belly, Sarah? Yes, Sarah nodded firmly. Her sincerity was evident, and I couldn't help but believe her. Then can you tell me again what the baby is saying? I asked. Well, the baby is scared of Daddy, Sarah began, her voice serious. Daddy is trying to hurt us on purpose and separate Mommy and the baby, so the baby is holding onto Mommy as tightly as possible. I was speechless at Sarah's words. Though her explanation was simple, it connected all the strange occurrences, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were deliberate attempts to harm the baby. The realization sent shivers down my spine. Mommy, what's wrong? Are you in pain? Sarah asked, tears welling up in her eyes, clearly worried about me. Sarah, I'm sorry, I'm okay. I reassured her, hugging her tightly as I wiped away her tears. In that moment, I made a silent vow to myself. I needed concrete evidence or no one would believe what was happening. The next day, after watching my husband leave for work, I retrieved a baby monitor from the back of the closet. It was something we used when Sarah was a baby. If this revealed what I feared, it would be terrifying. But if it showed nothing, that would be a relief too. With a glimmer of hope, I hid the camera behind a houseplant. A few days later, I mustered the courage to check the footage. What I saw was beyond anything I could have imagined. It shattered the small hope I held onto. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this go unpunished. A week or so passed since I saw the footage. Earlier in the day, I had left Sarah at my parents' house. Now, I had tidied up the entire house and prepared a perfect dinner before Mark came home. Mark finally arrived and was surprised to see the elaborate meal set on the table. "What's going on?" "I could have made dinner." "I can't let you do anything dangerous anymore," I said firmly. "Huh? What do you mean?" Mark asked, a hint of caution in his eyes. "I mean exactly what I said. What have you been feeding your pregnant wife all this time? I don't understand it at all." "My health has improved significantly since I stopped eating your cooking for the past week," I explained, my tone serious. Mark seemed slightly shaken by my words. As I continued to speak, I noticed his expression shifting. "I've been pretending to eat your cooking and throwing it away," I confessed. Mark's eyes widened in surprise. Meanwhile, as I investigated around the house, I noticed that the non-slip pad under the rug was missing, and the anti-tip device on the bookshelf next to the bed had been removed. It sent shivers down my spine. These actions weren't just aimed at our baby, they implied that I was also a target. When I glanced at Mark, I noticed his mouth twitching as he attempted to force a smile. Suddenly, I recalled instances when body wash had spilled on the bathroom floor after a shower and items had fallen from shelves. If I had slipped and hit my stomach during any of those incidents, it could have been disastrous. Those were just coincidences, right? Maybe I just made a little mistake, I mused aloud. I thought so too, until I saw this. I thrust my phone in front of his face and played the footage recorded on the baby monitor. In the video, Mark was clearly heard speaking on the phone. "I understand, but it's not going as planned. It's surprisingly difficult to make someone disappear in an accident. Well, 2 people. It would be best if the baby in the belly could disappear too." Mark's voice echoed from the video. The words sent chills down my spine, no matter how many times I heard them. As I watched Mark, I noticed him trembling slightly and remaining silent. Despite my wariness, I continued to speak. "The person on the phone is a woman, isn't it? You're discussing doing terrible things once I'm gone, things too disgusting to even mention. How dare you spy on me like this? I'll sue you. Do you even understand what you've done?" "Just shut up. Just shut up." Mark exploded, his face turning bright red as he lost control and lashed out at me. Instinctively, I hunched over to protect my stomach. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and I heard Mark scream, "Landa, are you okay?" "Kimberly, thank you," I said with relief as I looked over to find Kimberly, who had easily subdued Mark and was now laughing. In fact, she's a strong woman who has won the national wrestling tournament multiple times. I had asked Kimberly to stand by in the next room just in case. Mark, pinned down by Kimberly, was now shouting angrily, "You think you're alive because of me, right? Yet you keep bothering me with demands to play with the kids and help with housework. If you all would just disappear, I could live freely. Just get lost, for my sake, you idiot." "So, that's what you think. But thank you, huh? Actually, you just helped me a lot by self-destructing," I said calmly, thrusting my phone, which was on a call with 911, in front of Mark. I had put it on call mode earlier, so all of Mark's words had been recorded and sent directly to the police. "Please, not the cops," Mark pleaded, struggling to escape Kimberly's grip, but she held him firmly in place. "I'm sorry, I was wrong, please. I apologize. Forgive me." Mark continued to beg, but it was too late for apologies. "That's not something you can get away with just by apologizing. What you were about to do." "Don't say such things," Mark interrupted, thrashing around. Suddenly, the sound of several footsteps and a voice saying, "We're coming in," echoed, and police officers entered through the unlocked door. In no time, Mark was taken away. Even as he was being escorted out, he pathetically clung to me, pleading for help. A subsequent investigation uncovered Mark and his mistress's sinister plan. Their objective was to eliminate me, who stood in their way, so they could be together. Even if they failed to get rid of me, they planned to fabricate a story about the loss of our child due to my carelessness, leading to divorce. Moreover, they hoped to blame me for the incident to claim compensation during the divorce proceedings. The audacity of their scheme leaves me speechless. Even now, the thought of what could have happened if I hadn't noticed anything sends chills down my spine. Mommy, the baby is happy. She says she can always be by your side, Sarah said as soon as I picked her up. Yes, I'm so glad. It's all thanks to you, I said, thanking my daughter from the bottom of my heart as tears of relief flowed. Mommy, why are you crying? The baby is looking forward to meeting you. I'm also very excited, Sarah said, noticing my tears. A month after Mark's arrest, our divorce was finalized. A few months later, with Matt by my side, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Sarah was overjoyed to meet her little sister and has since become a very reliable big sister.